My name is Obiakwe Okolo. My friends and family call me Obi, so you guys can call me Obi because we're friends. I've been the host of this community for the last 3 years, and it has been my pleasure and my honor, and I'm having a really good time doing it. Every month we speak to this a theme, and the theme is selected by the global community the previous year. We know the themes for next year. They're all bangers. It's going to be fun. The theme for this month is trust. So that'll be fun in a minute. Okay. I'm going to leave that alone for a hot second. All of the things that we do are done and sustained by generosity of time, generosity of money, generosity of resources. And that's the case for every chapter around the world. None of the people who greeted this morning are being paid to do this. I'm not being paid to do this. The only people paid by Creative Mornings are the 7 people who work at HQ in New York, and they sustain a community of 162,000 people. So this is a testament that generosity still exists and that community is sustained by generosity. Our title sponsor this year in our chapter of DC is Bittersweet Creative. I'm biased. I work for them. Bittersweet Creative is a full-service creative agency based in Washington, D.C. that also has a nonprofit storytelling arm. Fundamentally, the work that we do around the principle and mantra of rejecting cynicism, defying apathy, and celebrating good. We feel that this is vitally important because in the world of creativity and design, it is very easy to become cynical. It is very easy to fall into apathetical patterns. It's very easy to lose sight of the good, especially in creative services work, because we know it's hard. Shout out, anybody? We're gonna pretend like it's not hard. Give it a fire. Y'all do okay, cool, dope. Okay. It's hard to do, and creativity, design can make us all of these things. But I think that the practice of creativity flourishes when we do these three things. Thank you to Bittersweet for cutting a check and also allowing me to have the time to do this on the side. I guess on the side front. Like I said, Bittersweet Monthly is our nonprofit storytelling arm. If you know of any institution, organization, individual, group of people who are doing any hope-building work in the midst of despair anywhere in the world, go ahead and go to this link and submit a nomination. We send out teams of filmmakers, photographers, and writers to spend 5 to 10 days with these people and sort of listen deeply to their story and then translate it for our audience and the consumer public. We just told a story about a community in northern India called Snehalaya, founded by a man who realized that there was an opportunity to provide services to the children and families of sex workers in rural India. And now he's at 9 years later, running one of the best schools in the nation of India. And all of the students are children of sex workers. All of the teachers are former sex workers. It's a really inspiring and beautiful story. It's incredible. So yeah, check it out. Thank you, Bittersweet. Also, Plants Alive. I need to change this slide. Amari, can you remind me to change the slide? Because this is not Plant Fest anymore. Plants Alive provides those resources for us to have that when we need them. And Charlestown AV, Jeremy in the back, shout out Jeremy, handsome man with the camera. Again, prior to the pandemic, we recorded all of our events. After the pandemic, things were dry. No one was giving stuff away, rightfully so. And then they actually reached out to us and said, hey, we do this for the Creative Mornings community in Boston. We are now based in DC. We'd love to do it for you. And now we can sort of broadcast and show our events even for the people who don't attend. So thank you. None of this happens without them. And of course, we get to inhabit these beautiful spaces in DC. I always joke that I get emails from hosts in other places in the world, and they're like, we're trying to get our elementary school gym, and it's really hard. And I'm like, great. Also, the Smithsonian called me yesterday, and they want to host us. Again, the generosity of this community is incredible. And we are now in a new space that we've never been in before. Has anybody in this room who does not work for Aspen been in this space before? No. Exactly. It's great. It's beautiful. There's a lawn over there. I just want to give a moment to shout out the Aspen Institute for hosting this. And I want to give Kaylee, who you all met last month, by the way, if you were at our last month event, she co-hosted with Colleen, to talk a little bit about Aspen's art program.
Kaylee. Good morning. Welcome to Aspen. My name is Kaylee. I am the Senior Program Manager for the Arts Program here at the Aspen Institute. As an OG Creative Mornings DC member since 2013 for DC, and now core core team volunteer. I'm so excited to welcome our community here into our space. The Aspen Institute is a global nonprofit organization committed to realizing a free, just, and equitable society. We drive change through dialogue, leadership, and actions, help solve the greatest challenges of our time. We have a little bench where that's painted if you want to take a selfie that you were here. It's right over there. The Institute includes over 60 plus policy programs in addition to our public programs, leadership seminars, and international partners. Our work touches on education, economic opportunity, climate, but also the humanities, culture, philosophy. What does it mean to be a good society? As one of the policy programs, the arts program champions the role of artists and culture leaders as critical thought leaders, futurists, and change makers. As you can see in our lobby and our funny little green lawn, right there under the stairs, arts is a part of it's on our blood. It's a part of our campus. Our campus was designed by the Bauhaus legend, Herbert Bayer. So we're an art space, we're a culture space. We're so happy to have you here this morning. And if you're curious about learning more, our website is there, but aspeninstitute.org. You can find us there.
Thank you, Kaylee. Everybody say thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Love it. What's the next slide? Oh, we've thanked Kaylee. Now let's thank the rest of the core team of volunteers. I can't say enough about these people who do this thing. I think every person in leadership should be honest about the type of leader that they are. I am not task-oriented type A, call it effective leader, and that's just the reality. But I have also played team sports my entire life, and a lot of the people who have called mentor and coach have just reminded me that it's about the people you surround yourself with. And I can genuinely say that I love these people because none of this happens without them. We are nothing without them. I'm specifically not a host without any of them. So shout out to every single one of them. If you see any of their faces, please say thank you to them because, again, they are doing this for free. If you would like to be involved in any capacity, specifically day of volunteering, hit Amari Donovan at gmail.com down there at the bottom. Please use that. Just do both of that. Email that, CC that, because that email is a spam box and things will get lost in there. Like I said, global community, we're everywhere. It's really cool. If you are ever traveling, I just want to also shout out, like, this graphic hasn't been updated. There's a lot happening on the continent that is not reflected. Just heads up. There's a Lagos chapter. Shout out Lagos. There's one in Accra. There's one in Tunis. We got African chapters. Just want to say that out loud. If you're ever in any of these places and you happen to be there on the 3rd or 4th Friday of the month, just check and see if there's an event going on, because there probably is. And then you should attend. And I guarantee you'll walk out with a friend. If you are moving, like Maddie, I'm not mad that she's moving. I'm just not happy about it. And you are looking for a place to sort of find a new anchor community, reach out to me and I'll connect you to the host. It's really that easy, and it works every single time. So know that you are part of many. And the only way we grow this community is if you bring a friend, which, to Maddie's credit, she did bring someone to replace her in this community. Her name is Jessica, and we're going to love her just as much as we love Maddie. Okay, cool, moving on. If you can never make an event, know that there are virtual events happening all the time. One of those is our sort of virtual field trip construct. It's members of communities all over the world sort of taking you into their world virtually and having conversations, typically around 40 minutes. Great time, if you have time. These are photos from last month, which I was not at because I was traveling. But again, a shout out to Kaylee and Colleen for holding it down at Planet Word. Did you guys enjoy the Hills Talk last month? Yeah. And if you missed it, again, shout out to Charlestown. You can watch it online, the entirety of it. It was really, really good. He is an incredible person. And we have another incredible person here to speak to us today. Mr. Cordell Carter, Esquire. I love Esquire as like a tag. I don't know why. It's just fun. I want to say really quickly before Cordell goes into this, you all who have been part of this community know that we're sort of a very honest community of people. We bring everything that we are and are feeling into this room freely and know that it can be held and know that the room is trusted to hold those things. We've been, but we're also coming into a season that's going to be whatever the hell it's going to be, right? And I don't want to sort of skip over that. I want us to sort of hold that. We're going to right size it. We're not going to give it more weight than it deserves, but it's going to be there, right? And I want, as the theme is trust today, you've all trusted us with your time. You've all trusted us with your energy. You've all trusted us with your sort of intellectual capacity, and we're going to steward that trust as best as possible. But we're not going to sort of avoid the weight of the moment. At the same time, we're not going to burden you with the weight of the moment. We're going to right size that weight. So there will be a place, as it's always been, of joy. It will be a place of co-grieving, co-suffering, if that is necessary. And I just want to say that up top as we go into this thing. And I'm also realizing that our November event is the week after the election. I'm just trying to like gas myself up for how that's going to be. So just kind of hold all of that together with us. If you're feeling anything, if you're feeling like we're pushing the gas pedal on a certain topic and you're not really feeling it, you want to talk about it, please feel free to reach out to me or any of our core member and volunteers. We're not here to avoid the hard shit. So with that said, I want to introduce our speaker. So Cordell is someone who I met on Wednesday. And this is, and I'm just going to be honest with you, like this is the conversation about trust. I had a funny conversation with a friend the other day, or yesterday, just in my inbox about something, and I presented something to him, and he very like immediately dismissed. He's like, "Nah, I don't want that." And I was like, "He's like, it doesn't look like something I want." And I said, "Okay, cool. Don't judge a book by its cover." And then we sort of got a little bit more into the content of the thing that we were talking about. And he was like, "Oh, actually, that does sound really dope." I was like, "Yeah, like don't." And I sort of said this as a passing thing, but truly, the more that I've thought about it, the more that I realize that's how we got here in the first place. Don't judge a book by its cover. Judge it by the person who told you to read it. And Kaylee presented Cordell. And I trust Kaylee. So I was fine meeting him on Wednesday and having to speak on Friday. That's the reality of it. Cordell Carter is a thinker, a scholar, an author, a former preacher's kid. I guess he's a current preacher's kid. A preacher's kid. But now, and I love the way that he put this, sort of has a practice of a civic faith, which I think is a really beautiful thing in our time, and it's something I wanted to talk more about. He is a vocalist and has been featured on a studio-produced album, which we talked about. He's got a book coming out that I need to plug, because apparently he's really bad at plugging his own book. It's called Becoming an Inclusive Republic. A servant on the civic mount. Cordell is the executive director and founder of the Belonging program here at Aspen, which he'll talk a little bit more about. In our hour-long conversation, there was sort of a kindred sort of nature to this community. It felt right immediately. He's not afraid of talking about difficult things, and trust is a difficult topic to talk about, and belonging is an even more difficult topic to talk about. So I'm really excited for you all to engage in this dialogue with someone who has been thinking about this for the majority of his career. He's a historian. He's a dad. He's just a nice guy. Welcome to the stage, Cordell Carter.
Good morning, everyone. Is this on? Can you hear me? How's everybody doing? I hadn't slept in 2 days. It was a long night in New York. So if I pass out, it's not you. So my name is Cordell Carter. I lead the Aspen Institute Project on Belonging. I've previous 7.5 years led the Socrates program. That ended 3 weeks ago. Yeah, and so it's a long goodbye. We had a going away event in Aspen last week, and I cried a lot in public. And so, where's Catherine Campos? She said, there it is. If you can please stand. my second best hire ever. Right? Thank you for all your work in Socrates as she continued to work. So let's talk about trust and then belonging. And I want to talk about my personal journey. My plan is to talk for a half hour, and then we can just open up the questions. And I'm really good the call and response of preacher's kid. So let's do it same, right? So how did I get here? I love my country. Okay, let's be real clear. Let me say it one more time so you can hear this black man say that. I love the United States of America. I think this is a land of opportunity. The Socrates program and other things before it has allowed me to travel to more than 35 countries with the Aspen flag. And I think that's enough of a sample size to compare and contrast. Not saying we're the best that ever existed. I can't make that statement. I'm merely saying I see more pathways for prosperity, more pathways for self-actualization here versus other places. Where you were born is not where you stay if you don't want to. That's true in America, regardless of your ism, regardless of the era. And so you start to zoom out a bit and look like what's really going on behind this crazy dynamic place we call the United States of America. And you look at the last 25 generations of leaders, and I'm looking here at like a 25-year period of leadership. So we're starting colonial period and working our way forward. You'll find that there have been 4 major foundings. And there's something that happened at every single founding. So let's start at the top, shall we? The colonial period. What was the mass like compromise that required everyone to trust the crown? What was the compromise? The compromise is that you're free, but you're still a subject, which is a new concept, right? Meaning I'm far away from the crown. They only have 10,000 troops quartered here, mostly at the ports. So if you're not in Savannah, if you're not in New York, if you're not in Boston, you may not ever see a British troop. So who lords over you? Yourself. That's who lords over you. Yet, the crown may get some taxes from you every now and again on pretty much every single thing, which ultimately led us to the constitutional period, that second founding. The Great Compromise was what for the constitutional period? Exactly. We are free, but we must contend with the institution of slavery. So all of us are not free, but we're going to say that we're all free. Okay, move forward. The Civil War period, post-Civil War, what was the compromise? No more slavery, but de facto apartheid. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in that fourth founding, this post-civil rights era. We've had a national consensus. We've lost the consensus. It's back. It's gone again. But it's time to make a new compromise. And it is my greatest hope. Frankly, I see it as my mission to ensure that the compromise is not racialized, that it is on a much broader topic. And that is that we all belong and that we should enjoy opportunities to thrive. Now, if I am speaking to, like my audience yesterday with private equity folks, I said, I know you think you belong because you're all rich. Let's talk about the people that are not in this room who are servicing this office as we sit here and have our caviar. Okay? They are not thriving. They don't feel like they belong. So if we can't figure out a way that they can thrive, none of us belong. Right? Amen. All right. I appreciate that. So how does this relate to trust? You can't have belonging without trust. Trust is a foundational element. It was October 1998. Yes, I'm older than I look. I was in graduate school at Carnegie Mellon, and one of my professors, I was really to tech as a younger person, not so much anymore. It was a cybersecurity class, and we had a major hack. And Carnegie Mellon had a center called CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team. It was maybe only 2 of them, MIT and Carnegie Mellon, in the late 90s, all right? And so he runs in, and I'm trying to describe him, he was about 6'3", 320, always wore overalls, brilliant, double PhD, always peanut butter in the beard. Like, who is your partner? You need to clean up, dude. It's really gross. This day was really bad, like half a sandwich, I'm not making this up, half a sandwich is in his beard. And he was flush as if he was crying. And he just goes on the importance of trust. He says you can't have a network of humans or machines without trust. It is the glue that holds together. When you have something, when you break into a bank and you take people's money, things that don't belong to you, violate trust. You destroy networks. That speech, that impassioned speech as he was spitting and the stuff is falling, has stayed with me ever since 1998. And I still see it coming up in our society today. You know, I talk to a lot of people who differ with me politically. And what you'll find is something horrible happened, at least in their minds, that violated something they thought that was held in common. And that's typically trust. Okay? And so what I'm proposing, this civic faith that I'm saying, the civic faith thing, that our sacred text is American history, good, bad, and different. I'm saying all of it, not just the stuff that Florida wants you to read. I'm saying all of it because it's important for the whole narrative, right? That civic faith has to be based on trust. And what that looks like, what that feels like, is thriving for the poorest among us and belonging for everyone else. But they're the same thing. So we have to change the language. You can't talk about equity and inclusion. I'm super cynical, right? So you can't talk about equity and inclusion because you're going to turn off like half the population. You can't talk about equality because, frankly, folks don't want you to be equal to them, okay? They think, I want to have something to lord over you with. That's just how humans behave. But by acknowledging our humanity and this propensity of humans, we just aren't good animals. I mean, can we admit that? You know, I have horrible thoughts right now. I'm sure you all do too, right? I have to like constantly tell myself that is not a good thing for humanity. And so you can't do that in Cordell, especially that massive delay at the airport today. At any rate, so let's acknowledge that and build policy around what actually exists, not this idealistic state that, you know, we all behave in this in an amazing manner. That's just not what happens, okay? So that's where I'm going with belonging. And so what does that look like from an Aspen side? We're looking at 35 cities. These 35 cities are right down what I call the T-zone. So it's the Midwest. None of them are coastal. Like, with all due respect to my Aspen colleagues here, we're an elitist organization. So if you're in the coast, we know you. Okay, if you're, for us in Midwest, it's Chicago and Austin. Other than that, you don't really exist. Well, we're going to spread that Aspen map a bit and go to places we don't normally go. Schenectady, Indianapolis, St. Louis. And we're doing, you're all familiar with Garrison Keillor? Prairie Home Companion? Yeah. Thank you all for being old enough to remember Garrison Keillor. It's too bad about me too. Who knew he was that gross? I mean, like, that really messed me up. That, you know, anyhow. So he got me tooed out because he was just an awful person. But before we knew he was awful, he had this great traveling show, Prairie Home Companion. And it was like, it was all this nostalgic radio show-like approach. I think it actually was the precursor to the phenomenon that became Hamilton. This idea of putting a live show, and granted, his show was fictitious, but they actually put history on stage for us. We want to remake that, right? This idea of traveling around the country, doing these shows that are localized, but it's almost a performance about belonging as this new national narrative, something we can all get behind, and then do a big convening in Montgomery, Alabama next September called The State of Belonging in America. Now, we tried this 3 years ago with SHRM. You all familiar with SHRM? Yeah. Any of you members of SHRM? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember SHRM. Yeah. This is Society of Human Resource Management, and I love them so much, but we are so different. And I walk into these convenings acknowledging I don't have the answers. That's a very different approach for a business association. They're supposed to have the answers, even if they can make it up on the spot. That is not what we do at Aspen. And so with all due respect to my colleagues at SHRM, we had to go back to the drawing board on this. And I'm glad we did, because 3 years later, we have something that's fundamentally different that I think could really change the face of this country. And so that's what belonging looks like on the U.S. side. On the global side, because remember, we're in the Americas, you have two options, by force or choice. That's how you got here, right? Some of us are by force, some of us are by choice. Either way, we're here. So let's just acknowledge that we're here. Let's celebrate, you know, our shared history and what I call the other AI, and that's ancestral intelligence. Let's collaborate, make something happen for people and communities that share reflection. And let's connect across the 35 borders of the Americas. That is, ladies and gentlemen, the Festival of the Diaspora. We started that 4 years ago. It was a bunch of Socrates alums that frankly didn't feel welcome in the Ideas Festival. I was just there last week. But I know I'm the entertainment. Okay? Others didn't get that memo, but I got it day one. At any rate, well, at the Festival of Diaspora, we are not the entertainment. We are the show. You are the show. It's a very collaborative, I call it the secular tent revival. Okay? So it pleases my parents that even though I'm not religious anymore, I use the same words that they do. And so that's been going for 4 years. It's frankly operating on its own now. There are 4 women in Medellin that run the show, and we do updates once a week. There is nothing more amazing to me than to have an idea in a cafe in Puerto Rico, get yelled at about it, and 4 years later, there are people that have sustainable livings, taking care of their families off of that idea. That's the other side of humanity, that we can create amazing, beautiful things. and they can sustain themselves if you put the right strategy around it. And so the belonging work is both national and global. The intent is to go to the African continent in Q1 2025. We're planning to be in Kenya with the Aspen Institute in Africa this November, but there's a lot going on in Kenya right now. That's not a good idea. And so we're waiting for Q1 2025, and it's either going to be Kenya or Ghana. But the intent is to spread the festivals across the globe, at least one on every continent by 2027, and continue the work across America with the State of Belonging in the USA. And so that's what I'm up to. We're incubating it here at Aspen. Left a very cushy role to do something completely entrepreneurial, but humans do that too. So where should we start with the questions about my optimism about the cynical place I call America?
Don't be shy.
I can give more on the theory of action. Let me lay that out for a second.
Yeah.
So becoming an inclusive republic, this is a piece that was created in 2018. I was asked to create the American Values Seminar. It was in that room right there. I forget whose name that room is on the corner there. In 2019, we had a big fight over the name of that seminar with some Aspen colleagues. I just could not believe they were offended by the American Values Seminar. I'm like, well, what part offends you? And they told me pretty much all of it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. If there's some confluence of events, we changed the title. I think it's more appropriate. We brought in some different voices, not just founding fathers, but also more contemporary voices. And I said, well, what is it that we're becoming? I know what we think we are, but nation states are evolutionary products. They continue to evolve over time. I mean, look at this room. Do you think the founding generation in 1770s looked like this room? I highly doubt it. Okay, but that's who we are now. And so this becoming an inclusive republic is a hopeful spin on American history. And he asked 3 questions. Who is we? We hold these should be self-evident, all men are created. Okay, what does that mean in the 1770s? What does that mean in the 1870s? My grandmother couldn't vote to 1965 because of the Voting Rights Act. In fact, I argue that the dynamic democracy that we know today didn't start until the Voting Rights Act was passed and then enforced in 1966. Mm-hmm. That's when the USA, as everyone in this room knows, started. 1966, not 1776. Okay? Second question is, how has our notion of we evolved? Okay? And then thirdly, where do we go from here? That's the whole premise of this becoming inclusive republic. And it's hopeful, I promise. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I am so intrigued by the work you're doing, but it only adds a bit of intrigue to who you are. So can you give us a little bit of background, like where are you from? What was it? Because what leads you to this particular phase with this particular mindset at this particular point?
Thank you for that. So I did mention I'm the son of a preacher man, and that is absolutely accurate. But I'm also from Forsyth, Virginia. Anybody know Hampton Road, 757? Yeah, I'm from the land of Pharrell, as they call it. We both grew up in the church, and I think we've both been influenced by it. Now, I was part of now we would see it as a cult. But then it was just, what we call the sanctified holy roller type of folks, where you had service literally 6.5 days out of 7. Like, we were not allowed to sin because there was no opportunity to sin. My parents married very young. They were married at 17. My dad thought he was going to Vietnam to die, and so they got started before he was shipped off, and he came back miraculously. And as 23-year-olds, they had 3 children under the age of 5. And so they immediately got, captured or raptured, if you will, by this hyper religious community where everything that seemed fun was somehow sinful. And that was the only world I knew until I was 14 years old and we moved to Washington State because my father worked for the Department of Navy, and all the nuclear subs are on the West Coast because it's deeper water. You can't really have them in Norfolk. And so when he switched what's called the MOS, we all moved, and that's when the world opened up to me. I was used to rooms where everyone looked like me. And then I get to that first semester at Curtis High School, and I learned something called LDS. I'm like, what is LDS? I was in a Mormon enclave. Literally, they were a white flight neighborhood. We didn't know that. The realtor just put us there. And I was one of 10 people of color in the school district. I was very popular. At any rate, everyone knew my name by third period. It freaked me out. And so that was a jolting experience for me, but I also learned so much from it because people are just people. Good, bad, and different, just people. It opened my world a lot. And then, we moved around a lot. And so I had to be a cultural chameleon often. I did it better than my sisters. They were they just kept in touch with the people from the last base, and I didn't do that. I just kept moving forward like this is a new group. It was a game to me. It was a lot of fun. And I was into music. And so if you sang, you would always find a crew. And so a cappella choir and the Mormons are great singers, by the way. Fantastic singers, quartets, jazz choirs, swing. They're really good at this stuff. And so I fell in with them and had a wonderful time, and then went off to travel a lot as a young person. And, in my home, my wife is French. We don't talk about race. We talk about nationality and national traits. And so literally I'm at Ideas, and I get a call from my daughter who's traveling in Europe right now. She's graduated. She's in tears, so I'm freaking out. And I'm like, I would get on the plane. What's up? What's their name? I'm jacking somebody up. And she says, Dad, am I black enough? This is last week. And I had to have that moment where I'm like, well, did I not give her enough sense of pride or grounding in the conversations of our country, regardless of what is right or wrong? This is a conversation that we have. She will be perceived the way she'll be perceived. To prepare her for the world that I know is out there. Outside of the oasis of our home, did I prepare my child? I'm convinced I did. She was having a moment. And I'm pretty convinced that maybe a little alcohol was involved. Maybe. But it forced me to ask some questions that were uncomfortable, but I came to a resolution that, the way that I was raised, literally going all over the place, where I knew I was black, well, we knew we were Christian. In fact, we were Christians. That stark delineation and who you are and who you're not is not something that I raised her with. That was on purpose. I did not raise her in the church. I saw some awful things in the church. And so I've been purposely rebelling against norms in my own way, and certainly the way I raised my child. And her journey mirrors my own intellectual journey, spiritual journey. It's the reason that I see optimism and possibility where others see despair. That was a very long answer. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's like the name of the second book is Notes in the Back Pews, and it's all about my upbringing in on this particular movement, as well as just the insanity of my family. Like there's no reason I should exist. There's no reason my dad should exist, but for different decisions, because everyone else in the family was doing something radically different. That was definitely sinful, without question. But we're all the first, my sisters, myself, my father, the first to kind of break that cycle. And cycle breaking is the ethos of Carter household. Yes. I saw a hand.
Yes. Hopefully I'll articulate this question well enough. When you are doing convenings like the American Civic Values, what are some of the strategies you do to gain the trust of people who you want at the table, who should be at the table but may not feel welcome at the table for many reasons? And then even if they're not there the first time, how do you reflect to build that trust for future convenings?
So I think that's a conundrum of the Aspen Institute. There are two theories of action with respect to convenings. One is, okay, I want to focus on the elite leaders that have the greatest opportunity to, in fact, massive change, or my notion of leadership is not top 1%, but top 30%, and I want as many people in the room as possible. I'm door number 2. By design, door number 2. And so I like to have conflict because tension is good. And so we in the Socrates program, we had a scholarship fund. It's typically used for folks in the public sector. I use it for Trump supporters because I had to convince them that this was a safe place for them. Because if it's not safe for them, it's not safe for anyone else. Okay? So I call that walking towards danger. And it's always a good result when you do that. So once one person from that community that externally validates the convening, it's a lot easier to get other folks in that same intellectual community. Because diversity of perspective is a specter of diversity that we should be leaning in on. I think that's part of our problem in this country, that if you don't agree with me, there's something wrong or defective with you. And I'm like, that just cannot be true. Cannot be true. And so I'm purposely seeking conflict. But this is a safe place. And so you can be adversarial in this context. And so we can't practice that in a civil way. I may have to question my optimism. Hopefully that's responsive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for that. I just want to dig in a little deeper because as I see this road trip around belonging, we're going, focus is mostly on red states. They want to have a conversation about how great America is. I'm like, that's great. And yes, and let's talk about some things that are more challenging. Mm-hmm.
Hi there.
Oh, hi. Okay, there you are.
My question was very similar to that one, so I'm going to sort of add a little bit. First, the question on all of our name tags, do you believe that trust is earned or given freely or at the get-go? I would love to hear what you think about that and how you think about that. And also, I feel like people it's hard, like people are averse to conflict. They're afraid to say exactly what they think. I'm at work all the time. I'm like, everybody's so too nice. Like, just tell me, like, what do you really think? Even if it's a little, there's a nice way to say it, even if you think it's painful. So how do we sort of like encourage and practice that and really, both in like this bigger civic life, but also just on a person-to-person level?
Yeah, so to address your first question, I think it's a two-way street. I have to behave in a way that assumes your trust until you disappoint me, right? And so I say the same thing about belonging. I have to walk in this organization and assume that I belong, and I'm going to behave as the person thriving until you tell me something different. It's a two-way street on that. Organizations do their part, individuals do their part as well. With respect to your second question, I feel like you were at the bar with us last night, this morning. We were talking about that very issue of like the reticence to speak our minds, like we just don't feel safe. We, in our attempt to not say that we're going to outlaw hate speech like other civilized democracies have, we create what I call proxy speech. And so there's a way of me saying that I think you're horribly unattractive without saying that, right? That's probably an absurd example, but again, I didn't sleep, so don't blame me. We have made it unsafe to express differences in the country. It's a cultural thing. In the 90s, they were calling it political correctness. Now they call it woke, whatever they call it. It's like a cottage industry in not saying what you want to say. And so we have to practice. The mantra I tell my daughter every morning, except on this European trip, I know she's drinking a lot, is practice makes better. Okay? And so you have to practice conflict in a respectful way. You have to practice disagreement. You have to practice these things. Aspen is a place where you can practice that. I don't know how much you all know about Socrates seminars, but literally you close the door for 3 days, all right? And you're a round table of 25 people. Everyone has the same readings, and you get to go at each other for 3 days, 4 hours a day. It's pretty awesome. I did it once in 2012, and I was like, I'm here. 8 years later, I'm here, okay? And so, because there was no other place to do that. Tell me where it's safe to do that. Tell me where it's safe to like play devil's advocate where you work. I think there's something wrong with that. I used to work in Germany. They're very clear about what they feel. They're going to tell you. And it doesn't feel respectful, but at least I know. And so what I tell folks on this, when I'm doing these private belonging sessions, typically with boards of directors, I said, be as racist as you want inside your house. Be as sexist as you want inside your house. But the moment you step out your door, fiduciary duties to society come into play. And if you're behaving in a way in your corporation that's inhibiting opportunity, meaning shareholder growth, these are your shareholders, not mine, then you should be fired with cause. So let me be racist inside their house. That's awesome. Inside your house. Outside, got to behave in a certain way.
Try not jump in. So I have to admit that I am a person that this concept of belonging and embracing it kind of found me with a level of reluctance. I was admittedly one of these folks who thought it felt a bit light, a bit soft. And I come to realize that part of that was because I thought of it as relational, as friendship, as a kind of an acceptance, those things are important. But I think that was adding to the lightness of it. And I've come to understand it more as something that we can think of as structural. So I say that on the front end because I want to ask you, what do you think, or what have you found that we misunderstand about belonging? Or how are we reducing it at times to something that does not represent it in its fullness?
Thank you for airing that particular point, because the criticism that I get about my work, because remember, my chart, I didn't say it at the front, my charge, how I got on this route, it was January the 8th, 2021. We know what happened on January 6th, right? I'm on a beach in Colombia with my parents. They had both survived COVID, and we were celebrating. And I get a call from our CEO. He says, "Hey, C," never a good sign when he uses your initial. Like, oh boy, this isn't good, because I don't know you like that. The dude that calls me C is right here at the beach, and I ain't here. It's just, I think it's time for Aspen to have an external D&I program. I said, that's great. Let me find a D&I specialist. I'm not going to be one of 6 black dudes of the entire organization and be a diversity guy. I don't think so, dude. He says, no, that's not what I'm saying. He says, you are an Aspen program specialist. We need to find someone that works at Aspen because we're a unique organization. I said, okay, I understand that. So my journey to belonging started with D&I, doing a landscape analysis. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. It's just so convoluted. And I'll be frank, I still don't get it. Okay. So I said, okay, well, the proper role for Aspen is to figure out where the conversation should go, this normative critique on leadership in the country. So what should we be talking about? What's the end goal? If this was tethered to anything, what is it tethered to? And that's how belonging came up, emerged. Now, the criticism I get is that it's DEI light or DEI for conservatives. Like, oh, you're using American history, you make it easy for white folks. I'm saying maybe. But I'm just trying to get folks to see things differently, to see the possibility. And if American history is a good linchpin on which to hold that expectation, I'll do it. We're doing everything else. Let me try this. And so where I think belonging is failing is that it means different things to different people. We don't have a unified definition. We have to be okay with that murkiness. And that's really uncomfortable, because belonging in Schenectady is different than Kansas City, different than DC. All right. And it's certainly different if you're not bright. Belonging is not in your vocabulary. And there's a lot of people not bright. Okay. And so that is where most of the, I say the heat on belonging, and at least on my side, comes from. I'm also really focused on the private sector. And I have a good reason for that. I don't trust government. Because government is the only place where you can lie. Let me explain. Private sector, military, you have to tell the truth. Why? Because the consequences of not telling the truth are too great. Military, you don't tell the truth. Literally, your base will erode because you refuse to acknowledge global warming and the erosion of the soil. So what happens when your port erodes? You don't have a port anymore, and now you're open to attack. You lose a country. All right? In the private sector, you don't tell the truth about your market, you lose market share, you lose your job, stock options are gone. Our politicians down the street, it's very profitable to tell things that aren't true. It's very profitable to describe a country that does not exist, as long as you get enough people to agree. Then you win the election and you won. In their market, they've won. And so I don't trust them. People call corporate wokeness out. Jamie Dimon, he came up a lot yesterday. Jamie isn't dumb. He has billions of dollars. Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JPMorgan, by the way. He has billions of dollars in stock options. Do you not think he knows what his customers are going to look like 35 years from now? He'll be long dead, but his grandchildren won't. Okay? So if you're the biggest bank in the world and you have all of these options that could be worth billions and billions of dollars, wouldn't it make sense to invest in those future customers? Now, put any name you want on top of it, but that's exactly what the big boys are doing. They're investing in the customers 35 years from now. But how do you describe that in a way that doesn't tell your competitors to do the exact same thing? DEI. That's how. It'll scare them off. You keep doing your thing, you'll let the politics do the thing, and you still win 35 years later. Cynical, I know, but it's accurate.
Hi, Cordell. I wanted to go back to the question of the end goal for the belonging gatherings and how much of the end goal is just having a conversation and bringing people together versus coming to an agreement. And how is that, marketed? Like the optics of getting the Christian nationalists in the room or the people that are hesitant to come because they think they're going to try to be persuaded differently, to think differently. And so would love to hear your thoughts on
Great. Thank you for asking that question. Last week, I was at the Education Philanthropy Roundtable. My colleague, Ross Weiner, runs it. Like in that room, you had 16 of the largest philanthropies in the country that invest in education. So about $7 billion a year. And what I would say to you, what I said to them, I say your best practices, your research-based interventions are wonderful. But people don't believe in the American idea. It matters not. They're not engaged. And we have people that are spiritually, emotionally sick. They don't believe. Their hearts are broken. Their spirits are broken. We have to attend to their needs now first. And these are things you cannot see, but you see in how they vote, how they articulate themselves. You're seeing the externalities of broken people. And we're glossing over the fact that we have left so many people behind. People that will never forgive the elites. And if you're in this room, you're an elite. You're one of them. Or one of us, I should say, okay? And there are people who will see where your zip code is based and will make a base judgment on that because of their experience in that same zip code. We have to address that. So it is very much a civic revival, but it creates, I think, space to do more innovative things because you're getting folks back to the energy of saying, yeah, I'm open to possibilities. I see you've articulated a few ways that I can thrive, and then I'll know I belong. But unless we do that part and acknowledge that we jump to the solution before dealing with the problem, I think they're wasting their money. And I told them that. And then I told them to invest in me.
Oh, sorry. Wait, oh.
Hi, right here.
I'm sorry, where are you? Okay, there you go. Okay.
Hi. I just wanted to say, I'm glad you brought up the public versus private sector because as a public sector employee, I concur with the lies telling. I really like what you said earlier about trust and how for some people kind of have that experience where trust kind of goes out the window and it's really hard to rebuild that belonging. And in my experience, I've noticed that it seems like trust has been broken several times, so it kind of hardens people over time. And as someone that works with children, in education, I'm curious to know, how to kind of bring that conversation within a public sector space, especially when there's so many nuances and what we do as adults in that space, quite frankly, immediately affect the children that we work with. Because I understand a lot about the zip code thing and working with some of the kids that I do, their experience is already kind of paved in a certain way just from their starting point, but knowing that, and from my experience, how malleable they are and don't have that hardened shell yet from having their trust broken. Sometimes you do have to earn that trust because it might be at such an early age, but I think a lot about what can I, in my position as a public sector employee, do to rebuild trust and belonging with colleagues and model that for students who have yet to become those adults that are straying or are far from that table or furthest from opportunity.
Well, three things come to mind immediately. I too started my career in education. One is to be the most consistent adults in that person's life. I don't need to tell you this, but there's a lot that happens outside those classrooms, okay, that have a direct impact on the parents in those classrooms. And there's nothing you can do about that unless, the only thing you can do is be super consistent for that kid when you have access to them. Secondly, we covet what we see. And so one of the beautiful things about growing up in essentially all black magnet schools, G&T were forcibly blessed in the 80s. It was a pretty wild time now I think about it. They surrounded us with images of amazing people. amazing people who look like me. So I had dinner with Ben Carson recently at the beginning of the month, and the first thing I did was like this. You all are old enough to remember. You remember. That was from Gifted Hands. That was it became a movie, but it was part of our curriculum, part of PBS curriculum in 1983. Okay? And I remember that. I was like, I don't know what brain surgeon is, but I want to do something like that, because everyone, he has his hands up like this. He has the shrubs on. It's just so wild. But I coveted success. The person that's on my watch right now, you can't see this, but it's Vernon Jordan. I literally walk around. So I'm still impacted by what I see. So are children. So find the posters, bring in the speakers, surround those babies with people who look like them that are doing amazing things. It will change the way they see the world. And I forgot my third. I'm sorry, sleep deprivation. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yes, I see a hand in the back.
Hi, Cordell.
Hey.
You're talking to a room full of creatives, folks who love art, who love culture, who love like the creative industry as a mode of entry, right, into trust, into belonging. And I'm wondering whether you can talk in your own experiences, in your own life, or in the mission of Aspen, the role of the creative industries of art in building trust and belonging.
Thank you for that. I believe that art, or I should say expression, is the highest form of humanity. The fact that we can do some things that 99.9% of mammals cannot, and that is to create something outside of yourself that really has no purpose other than your expression, it's just an amazing thing to think about. And so we have sought, at the end of it, you see the art is completely integrated, but also in our own lives. I mean, I would ask you, what's on your walls? Probably something that inspires you. On my wall, there's an artist named Josiah. I forgot his last name. The Chattanooga guy. He created called 9 Paints. And it's I was talking about my life one night. We may or may not have some substance that evening. And we talked all night about life. We grew up very similar. And he's also a lawyer, but not practicing like me. And the next day he comes back and he unfurls this butcher paper, and it has 9 scenes, and those scenes are all from my life. So you see the pulpit, and like the choir, then you see a school, and I'm the only brown person in the school, and then you see, it was just really, really cool. I look at it every day. It literally gives me joy, it gives me goosebumps, and then I bounce and listen to my Napoleon Hill, and my day starts. I would love for everyone to have that. And so at the festival, the thing that we actually control, we have a whole lane called cultural expression. And so, yes, there's great people speaking about some topic on door 8. On door 9, there's typically a round table where people get a little deeper with a graphic facilitator in a room. But in door 10, you have some artists expressing themselves. It could be spoken word, it could be poetry, it could be music, it could be dance, it could be a film. But they're expressing themselves for 9 hours a day. Over 3 days. And so that was something we had to make sure was part of the design, this idea of cultural expression. And then on the last day of the festival, we do what I call discovery. And so we go off in 4 different directions. One of those directions is always going to be art. Next year in Medellin, you ever heard of Comuna Teresa? Comuna 13? Yeah. And so great history. I mean, tremendous history about this place. Literally 20 years ago, there were helicopter gunships shooting at people in this neighborhood, like the worst, most dangerous neighborhood in the world. And today, the cultural language of hip hop is everywhere, from graffiti, from the dancing. It's just tremendous. And to see how this community has changed and what it's done for the art movement in Latin America, oh my gosh, Medellin is incredible. And so art has a very important role. Frankly, I think you all are the ones that can help us belong, because you can create something that expresses how I feel, even though I don't have the words for it. And so please continue to create. The world needs you to do that.
I think that's the time we got. Thank you so much, Cordell. I really appreciate it.